afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. It is Saturday, September 21st, and you know what that means. It's time for the High Risk Wrestling Podcast. I am your host, trying not to get tossed into a dumpster. Yes, it is me, Jeremy Pierce. Check out the socials, Charismatic Creations on Facebook and YouTube, Charismatic_Creations52 on Instagram, and of course the 215 on Twitter. And with today's show, it was originally supposed to be about, I think, the worst of SmackDown, seeing as how SmackDown has moved to the USA Network, but it's been a rough week. I wanted to speak on something still close to SmackDown, and that is the importance of the second show for a professional wrestling company. SmackDown has outlasted and many others and has become the definitive second show and is now here, and we're going to talk about it and the others. But for now, you know what's next, so just go on and hit my music. And with that second show, there comes other shows, and WWE has had a plethora of other shows, and this list right here are the best non-SmackDown shows. And we start with number 5, Total Divas. I originally hated the idea of Total Divas, but it had to happen. Reality TV is just part of us, part of the culture, and the WWE found a way to capitalize that. It showed the viewers, us, the fans, the inside look of the lives of the female WWE superstars and behind the scenes in their personal lives and in the ring, out of the ring. And originally this show was centered around Brie, Nikki Bella, Naomi, Cameron, Natalya, Eva Marie, and JoJo. Get this, Eva Marie debuted on Total Divas before she ever debuted in the actual ring. That's how much they saw in her. But it did a lot to elevate the profile of the WWE women, especially the Bellas, and the show featured a lot of women. Brie, Cameron, Eva Marie, JoJo, Naomi, Natalya, Nikki Bella, Summer Rae, Rosa Mendez, Alicia Fox, Paige, aka Saraya, Mandy Rose, Lana, Maurice, Renee Young, Alexa Bliss, Carmella, Nia Jax, Ronda Rousey, and Sonya Deville. Mind you, Ronda Rousey did not want to be on the show, but it was really important, and it definitely helped. Number 4, ECW. Yeah, I'm talking about the WWE revival, pretty much WWE CW. After the success of the One Night Stand pay-per-view events back-to-back years, WWE decided to bring back ECW as a third brand. And although it started out as fun, it gave us superstars like Shelton Benjamin, elevated him. It gave us Kofi Kingston. It gave us Sheamus. Ultimately, it failed because Vince McMahon could not help but get involved and to make the brand look like a joke, to say, hey, ha, 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 I bought you. We know about the dark days of ECW. Number 3, NXT UK. Spinning off from NXT UK became a very, very important brand. It ran for 4 years. It aired weekly. It was taped, but it did so much for the NXT brand. It gave the WWE a place in the United Kingdom. It gave us Gunther. It gave us Tyler Bate. It gave us Pete Dunne. It gave us Rhea Ripley and Piper Niven and Toni Storm. They were the backbone of the division, and now look at them now, stars in their own right. This was great, and I miss NXT UK. It was something different. It was something good. It was something better, and I wish we could have it back. Number 2, Saturday night's main events. This was the show, airing on Saturday night, running from 1985 to 1992, and then revived in 06 to 08. This was a kind of like special TV special pay-per-view that aired on NBC, and it was great. It gave us some incredible moments. It gave us some incredible matches, and it holds a special place near and dear in our hearts. I think a lot of people really, really love it, really, really miss it, and now with it coming back, we are all very much excited. And of course, number one, NXT. Did you think something else would be number one? Did you think something else would top this? NXT is the WWE's developmental brand. NXT is it. It has worked, starting out in 2010 as that game show and then evolving into what we know now as NXT. The black and gold was Triple H's baby. It was like his little indie fed, and he would just hire wrestlers left and right. And it got so good to a point that the main roster stars were jealous because the guys at NXT, the girls at NXT were allowed to wrestle. They were allowed to put on great matches. They were allowed to put on great storylines, whereas the main roster had to deal with Vince McMahon. NXT is here. NXT is working. And this might be the best thing that WWE has ever done, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but NXT just works. We'll be right back. The Red Death. That's who the spotlight is shining on. You ask yourself, well, who's the Red Death? That would be none other than Daniel Garcia. So, word on the street is he has not signed a new contract with AEW, and he is really contemplating going back and forth between WWE and, well, of course, AEW. And here's the thing about Daniel Garcia. He's going to be great wherever he goes, and sticking on brand with the second show, he would do wonders in NXT. He's just a really good wrestler. He's very, very talented, and he's someone that benefits from that. He has the skills. He has the ability. We've seen that he can do the mic work. We've seen he can do the comedy. He can do the series. He can do in between. NXT would benefit greatly from him. AEW would benefit greatly from keeping him. His time is now, and everybody wants him. Is he world champion material? I believe this. Anybody can be a world champion. You just have to book them right. Anybody can be great. You just have to book them right and let them take the reins. The spotlight is on Daniel Garcia because this is the moment in his career where you have to make that tough decision. Where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I like Daniel Garcia. I am very much excited to ultimately see what decision he makes. Will he stay in AEW where he has made a name for himself? Will he go to WWE where he can be in brighter lights and a bigger stage? I want to know, because these are the times where you bet on yourself, and I am very, very interested in looking at his next decision. We'll be right back with our top story. That second show, SmackDown, Collision, Thunder, so on and so forth. That second show for a wrestling company is so important. It gives you the growth that you need. So let's talk about it. This topic stems from SmackDown being moved to USA. New TV deal, shows get moved around. SmackDown's moving to USA. Raw's moving to Netflix. AEW is probably going to move some things around with Rampage and Collision. But here we are with wrestling thriving. Wrestling is legitimately on 5 days. Actually, no, wrestling's on 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. And just this past month, we had wrestling on for, I think, 3 to 4 straight weeks. That includes Saturday and Sunday. So we're in a boom right now. And when your company is growing, you need that second show. The main reason for me is you have a big roster. And let's look at the WWE for a quick moment. We got SmackDown because the roster was growing. And then when they bought ECW, when they brought WCW, we had to have a second show. This was also in the midst of the Monday Night Wars. WCW ended up making their own second show. Another reason that you have the second show with the growth of the company is to expand your viewership. Let's go back into the pre-Monday Night Raw days. You had to watch wrestling on a tape delay, right? You had to figure out where it was going to happen, when it was going to come on. And this goes all the way back to 1956 with heavyweight wrestling. Then you had All-Star Wrestling, so on and so forth, Championship Wrestling. WWE at one point came on the MSG network. I don't know about that one. So these shows were coming on Saturdays and Sundays until Vince McMahon gave us Monday Night Raw. We had Saturday night's main event, which was the really, really big one that helped everybody. So you got to expand your viewership, and when you expand your viewership, you end up bringing in revenue. That's the ultimate point, right? You have your big roster, so you need that roster to grow, and because that roster grows, you need to expand your viewership. And when you expand your viewership, you bring in more money, you bring in more ad revenue. So here we are with wrestling on TV all of the time. And we're in this point where, is it too much? Is it not enough? Because in addition to, let's say the big three in America, WWE, AEW, TNA, you still have MLW and the NWA, who are starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger and grow for themselves. Then you have GCW, which is probably the top indie promotion in America right now. And then you have, to a lesser extent, Ring of Honor, which is an association to AEW. So let's talk about AEW right now. AEW is in the midst of negotiating a new TV deal, and it sounds like it's done. And we're waiting to hear the logistics and the specifics of it, right? So AEW ended up with Rampage. So before we had Rampage, the AEW would do Dynamite, which aired Wednesdays, and they would have Dark and Dark Elevation. Those came on YouTube. But as AEW was growing, and Tony Khan made a point that he said within 5 years, he wanted AEW to be profitable. And with this new TV deal, it looks like AEW will be profitable. You needed a second show. AEW, as the competitor to WWE, needed a second show. And we got Rampage. Now, Rampage originally was treated like a big deal until it ultimately dived down. And every now and then, Rampage does feel like a big deal. But with AEW's big roster, you needed a second show. So we ended up getting Rampage. And it was great. The thing with these second shows is you can't keep featuring the same people. You know what I mean? So you can't, let's say Darby Allin wrestles on Dynamite, don't have him wrestle on Rampage. Let Rampage, I'm not going to say be separate, but it needs to have its own storylines that bleed into Dynamite, and Dynamite has its own storylines to bleed into Rampage. And then as AEW was growing and growing and growing, they got a third show in Collision. So whereas Rampage was the 1 hour show, Collision became a full-fledged 2 hour show. And that's what companies need. So AEW has 5 hours of programming throughout the week on television. This is not even including Ring of Honor. So with the AEW programming of Rampage and Collision, they set out to do something that hadn't been done. They got multiple shows within 5 years. Now, mind you, SmackDown did not come until, I believe, 98, 99. Raw came in 93. So WWE had a second show within 6 years. Collision, Rampage, Dynamite. These, well, aren't going anywhere. I don't know about Rampage. We gotta keep our ears low. But AEW has done the work. They've shown you that they are ultimately here to stay. So they followed, well, they hit the 3 points that I mentioned. The big roster, which facilitated the need for another show, which we got Rampage. And with Rampage, expanded the viewership. And because the viewership came, you got more money, which allowed you to get Collision. And now here we are with AEW about to get another TV deal and a streaming deal. Then we go over to TNA, who will always be near and dear to my heart. They have rarely ever had like their own SmackDown. Now, they could have had one right around the time Dixie Carter put Hulk Hogan in charge, because they were growing for the longest time. After the WWE purchased WCW, they had no competition until TNA came along, and TNA really was number 2 right behind the WWE. But we know the story. So here we are with TNA, and what do they have now? They have Explosion. And Explosion is a 1-hour show. It airs, I believe, either on YouTube or the TNA streaming platform. And they're falling into that trap that WWE did for the longest time when we get to their other shows. We'll talk about that. I'll compare, since Explosion is a 1-hour show, I'll compare it to Rampage. They're both 1-hour shows, but the difference is Rampage has storylines. Rampage continues what's going on Collision, what's going on Dynamite, whereas Explosion, like a lot of the WWE 1-hour shows, are just matches. They're just recaps. And TNA would benefit greatly from changing out of that formula. Explosion needs to be an extension of Impact. You have a nice roster. We're going to talk about the Knockouts roster at another point with another show. But Explosion needs to be more. You are getting critically acclaimed. You have this working relationship with NXT, and it is helping. Don't use Explosion as a show just to put on matches. Make it something more. Then we have WCW. For the longest time, they were the WWE's biggest competition. So WWE had Monday Nitro, and they were like, you know what, we need a second show because their roster was also getting big. So they gave us Thursday Night Thunder. And it should have worked. But something went wrong. The first episode of Thunder was weird. Okay? Thunder should have worked. And here's the thing. When Thunder came, it was pretty much starting the decline of WCW, the downfall of that. And they figured, Thunder could help revitalize things. So what we got on the first episode of Thunder, we got 13 matches. One of them was a dark match. Okay. This was the opening card for Thunder. Randy Savage beat Chris Adams by DQ. Rick Martel beat Louis Spicolli. Tenzin beat O'Hara. Ric Flair beat Chris Jericho. The Giant, Big Show, defeated Ming. Bill Goldberg defeated Steve McMichael. Okay. The Steiner brothers defeated Buff Bagwell and Conan. Larry Zbyszko, representing WCW, defeated Eric Bischoff, who was representing the NWO. Ray Traylor defeated, Ray Traylor, guys, you don't know, Big Boss Man, defeated Scott Hall. Juventud Guerrera defeated Ultimo Dragon. This was for the Cruiserweight Championship. The Larry Zbyszko Eric Bischoff match was for control of Monday Nitro. Lex Luger defeated Scott Norton, and DDP defeated Kevin Nash by DQ. This was for the United States Championship. And in the dark main event, Hogan beat Sting. The longest match, Sting beat Hogan. The longest match on Thunder that aired was Larry Zbyszko versus Eric Bischoff. Let that sink in. Your main event only went 6 minutes and 41 seconds. And Ric Flair versus Jericho, which should have been a banger, went 4 minutes and 44 seconds. Because it was all about throwing things against the wall. Thunder should have worked. And with the popularity of WCW, it should have been what SmackDown was. But what went on behind the scenes just killed it. And Thunder is not remembered fondly. Then we move over to the WWE, right? I'm going to give you 4 shows. Actually, no. I'm not even going to give you 4 shows. I'm going to give you 5 or 6 shows. And we have Heat, Velocity, Jacked in Metal, Saturday Morning Slam, Superstars, 205 Live, and Main Event. Now, out of all of those shows, Main Event is still on TV. Main Event airs. Main Event has been going on since 2012. Now, what do these shows all have in common? Well, they're WWE 1-hour shows, and they're more like recap shows. They give you 2 matches, but they recap what goes on Raw and SmackDown. More often than not, they recap Raw. I remember waking up Saturdays and watching Jacked in Metal. I remember these fondly. I remember turning to MTV to watch Sunday Night Heat. Now, Heat is the one that really stood out because it was on for about a decade and started to really find a name for itself. I remember Stevie Richards making it Stevie Night Heat, Lita becoming involved, and Heat really became a kind of legacy event. And it was just fun. It just worked. And then there are the others. Velocity, Jacked, Metal, Superstars, all the same. Main Event is what all those shows were. They're just there. Saturday Morning Slam came on Saturday mornings during the morning cartoon block for whatever program network they were on. I think they were on the WB or the CW. I think they were on the CW. And because it was directed toward kids, moves that targeted the head and the neck were banned. So Randy Orton was definitely not wrestling on Saturday Morning Slam. And they had 205 Live, which was specific to the Cruiserweight division. And 205 Live was great. WWE rarely, if ever, followed through. The thing that all of these shows have in common outside of 205 Live are that they are just there. They are just shows. Again, you have to make it appointment television. You have to say, hey, you should watch this because stuff's going to happen. NXT and NXT UK, WWE's development brands. NXT UK actually kind of felt more in line with not being a development brand. And honestly, the black and gold brand of NXT really wasn't a development brand. It was just an indie fed. NXT is working, we discussed this before, so much to the point that they have their own second show and NXT Level Up. But NXT Level Up, once again, is falling into that same pattern of all other past 1 hour shows. 2 matches, recaps, no storylines. These shows need to be an extension of your main programming. It's not hard to do. SmackDown, we all know, is the most famous of all the second shows because SmackDown is still on TV. And with the birth of the Attitude Era, WWE needed to expand. We don't have to discuss SmackDown in full because we're going to get to that. It's like another show where we're just going to just love on SmackDown because I grew up as a blue guy. I'm a SmackDown guy through and through. But here we are, 2024 SmackDown USA, and we see the benefit of having that second show. Now, if the WWE did not have the brand split, honestly, I don't think SmackDown would be on TV because your roster is so big. You have to make your shows appointment TV and say, okay, we need people here. We need people here. SmackDown's here. Thunder is gone. SmackDown's here. We got Collision. That second show is important. And we're waiting on Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor needs to set itself first with getting his main show intact before we give them a second show. And Tony Khan can figure out the whole roster situation. Yo, Tony Khan, if you need help, call me. I can help. That second show is important, especially for those big companies. Whether your deal allows you to be on broadcast television with NXT now moving to the CW. SmackDown for the longest time was on broadcast television. So it feels weird not having SmackDown on broadcast television. There's a chance that AEW may get another show on broadcast television. So here we are with these shows. You're needed. You're wanted. Do not fall into that pattern of here's some matches, here's the recap. We don't need that. We don't want that. Continue to tell your stories. You can do a little bit of a recap. I think Rampage does it well. Rampage gives you about 4 matches, 2 really good matches, a solid main event. Sometimes it's important, sometimes it's not important, but they still recap what goes on Dynamite, and then they bring you into Collision. That's how you do it. It's great to have these shows, but we've got to do better with them. That's our show. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Check up on the screen what we got coming up. I'm trying to knock out a bunch of stuff. I am sorry, y'all. We got the show today. We've got a couple lists going down. Let's talk about it. Flashback Fridays. We're getting ready for a few more shows. We've got Bad Blood coming up. We've got War Games coming up and Wrestle Dream. It's a great time to be a wrestling fan. Check out those socials. Charismatic Creations on Facebook and YouTube. Charismatic_Creations 52 on Instagram. And of course, the 215 on Twitter. And as always, Isla Dawn Bailey, Gigi Dolan, Anna J, Willow Nightingale, Chris Statlander. Holla at your boy. Peace.